Want to welcome Mr. Roland Parrish and Lady J for the fireside chat.
Being able to have these conversations with Mr. Parrish, I literally leave different and better every time I have a conversation. And that's how you know when God has created somebody for impact, that no matter how many times you're around them, there is another aha moment. They say iron sharpens iron. So I hope you all walk out of here feeling even sharper today than you have before. So we are celebrating Black History Month, as you all know. And Mr. Parrish is Black history. If you don't mind, I want to go down some of your accolades. We heard some of them in the video, but not everything was mentioned, and we don't even have time to mention everything. But again, 25 McDonald's as a Black man, y'all. Hello, can we clap it up for that? He has the #1 Black-owned business for the last 5 years, and we are speaking to 6 coming up, right?
Yes, ma'am. Michael Jordan.
That is amazing. Yeah, we got to get the Michael Jordan here for sure. A lot of people don't know this about Mr. Parrish, but he has built a hospital in Uganda that is named after his parents. And they actually treat over 6,000 orphan children of HIV and AIDS infected parents annually. Is that not amazing? So in the video, we heard that he has donated over $1 million to St. Philip's. Well, Mr. Parrish has donated millions of dollars towards the education of our future leaders, right? There are so many schools. He has the Parrish Battle of the Bands, where every school that participates in that, they walk away with scholarship, millions of dollars. He has a library of management and economics named after him at his alma mater, Purdue. He has a career planning and development center named in his honor at Fisk University. There's a park here in Dallas named after Mr. Parrish, everybody, which is amazing. And again, the second largest investor in the Reimagining Redbird Project, which, of course, as you know, has helped bring medical facilities, much needed medical facilities, and hundreds of jobs right there in the southern sector of Dallas. So we read about Black history in our history books, right? We try to educate our children about Black history, but let's not miss that we are right here live in person with Black history. Can we clap it up one more time for Mr. Parrish? But Mr. P, I want to go back. I want to go back to the pre-McDonald's days. You know, I don't think I've ever asked you this. What was your very first job in life? Like, even as a teenager, what was your very first job?
Believe it or not, my first job was with a newspaper. It was a Black newspaper out of Gary called the Gary American. And we were in Hammond, the neighboring city. So my mother actually wrote a byline, the Hammond Briefs, that appeared in the paper to entice the people who lived in Hammond to buy the paper. And I remember it was 10 cents, and I think we got 2 or 3 cents of paper. And so when I go home, people say I still have some of the monies that I made off of that 3 cents in the bank. But first, I started then to be learning a little bit about accounting. 10 cents, we got 3 cents. I think the distributor got 2 cents, and then 5 cents went to the paper. But that was the Gary American, which was Black Press in Gary, Indiana. So that was the first job.
Okay.
First job.
That was one for, I never knew that. That was
yeah.
really cool. Yeah, okay. So McDonald's wasn't always on your radar. When you were going into corporate America, you ended up at Exxon.
Yes.
So let's talk about the transition between Exxon and McDonald's, because there were years where you were doing those simultaneously.
Yes, and so out of school, I interned with Exxon, and many of you probably have interned. So I interned with Exxon between my junior and senior year in college, and I went to Memphis, Tennessee, and worked in distribution and engineering. I was a numbers guy, numbers cruncher. And so I learned a lot. I stayed at Purdue, got an MBA, and then I elected to go back with Exxon. And it was somewhere around year 8 or 9, that I realized there was a glass ceiling, some of you know about that, and that I was going to have to leave in order to me, achieve what I felt I could achieve in life. I hadn't proven anything. And again, I always say I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Exxon. And so I started studying for a CPA. And what I was going to do, I know I would eventually end up in Houston. I had contemporaries from college who had their own CPA practices in Houston. So my plan was study for the CPA, pass it, work for Exxon to feed my family, and at night and on weekends, try to build my practice. And once I got my practice to where I could afford, then I would leave. And so that was my plan. And I just happened to walk into an office of a guy who had an 8-page McDonald's application. And I filled it out and got rejected. Then after 2 days, you go through, with the 7 steps, remember? Yeah. And so I guess about three or four, it was like 2 days later, then I decided, hey, I got to find out why they rejected me. And Ruth Anderson was the lady, and I called her for about 8 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. And she finally came to the phone. And I was telling a young man today, it's like, what do I say? When the lady said, just one moment, she's here, because she was never in. And I asked her about, one, my degrees. Believe it or not, McDonald's, all of their CEOs at that point, and the company wasn't 50 years old yet. They started in 1955. All of their CEOs did not have a college degree.
Wow.
And so she said, degrees don't mean much at McDonald's. I asked if they had a minority program. She said, no. And so I started talking about service stations. So even though I had an MBA, and I had contemporaries who were working in Europe, they were working in Japan, and I had my foreign assignment in Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm gonna tell you, I still have friends in Mississippi, so I love my time in Mississippi, but I had to run service stations. And so in running service stations, I started talking about things that I learned in service stations. Waiting on a customer, cleaning restrooms, landscape, time clocks, uniforms, and she didn't cut me off. So I continued to talk about what I learned in service stations. So I wasn't in the program, but she continued the application process. And then the last point I'll make, Lady J, was, so when I got in the program, it was 50 hours a week with Exxon, 10 hours of commuting,
Oof.
and 25 hours a week going to a McDonald's restaurant. If anybody's from Houston on 1960 and 45, 25 hours a week, no pay, not minimum wage, 25 hours a week, no pay. So I had an 85-hour work week. And I really think it was smart on McDonald's part, because you began then to know that you're going to run and work long hours.
Wow.
And so I did that for 2 years, then got the opportunity to come to Dallas, not very far from here. And I really think God planted me in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
I think He planted me in Pleasant Grove.
Well, we're so glad He did. So there's a couple of things I want to pick up on. First of all, if we saw an 8-page application, we'd probably be like, yeah, this ain't from God, Then you reject me, right? You send me a rejection letter, then that's when we say, okay, God, Exxon must be my route. I love, and I think that we always preach this to young adults and to kids, but we need to be reminded of this as adults. That no sometimes means not right now. I love that there was something curious inside of you where you said, I just got to find out why. Like, even if you tell me no, I have to find out why. Can you imagine where your life would be if you had not made those phone calls and you did it 3 times a week and you did it every day at the same time for 8 weeks? Like, I'm sorry, y'all. I thought I had grit, but I don't think I have the grit. But can you imagine how different life would look right now if you were not that tenacious to just get that answer?
Yes, I have thought about that. I do thank God for Exxon. I do thank Him for the gentleman who had the application. His name is Oliver Underwood. Great background, MIT background, Indiana University background. He was my mentor. He never realized, because I did this in secret, that 2 years of training, I really didn't tell many people. And he called me a few years back. He still lives in Houston, retired from Exxon. And he was a fan of the Oakland Raiders. And the Cowboys were playing the Oakland Raiders on Thanksgiving. And he called me out of the blue. Hadn't heard from him in maybe 15 years. And I was like, sure, I have tickets. You're welcome to come to the game Thanksgiving. And, do you want me to fly you up? But the thing was, I said, Oliver, do you know how all of this happened? He said, no. I said, you don't remember giving me the application? He said, no. And so I was just so grateful. And anytime the Oakland Raiders are playing the Cowboys, I call him up in Houston and ask him would he like free tickets, a flight, his grandson, your grandson can come, like to chauffeur you around and things like that. But he's never reciprocated. But he never even had any fathom or clue that he was the person that I got the application from.
Really?
No idea.
You mean I wasted all these years and I could have been? I'm just joking. That's amazing. And how many of us would actually work for free for 2.5 years, right? 25 hours a week? We won't even run up the road unless somebody give us some gas money, y'all. Okay. So I want to talk about the key in building success. You've all, obviously, we're going on 36 years, right, of you being a McDonald's owner, correct?
Yes.
Y'all, 36 years. Can we clap it up for that, please? So obviously you've done pretty good for yourself, Mr. P.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to talk about the sacrifices and disciplines that we must implement in our lives in order to build wealth and to build success. Mm-hmm. What are some of those?
Okay, I can think of 2 points, Lady Jade. One, I've been told by my friends and family that I have focus and discipline. So my father, many people think I was in the military, but I wasn't in the military. I would have gone. My draft number was high. I was in the Vietnam era. I would have gone. I would not have been a conscientious objector. But my number was 300 and something, so I didn't have to go. But I would have gone. But people think that I was from a military background because my father had this strong discipline. So discipline and focus, I've been told. The other one, if you wake me up in the middle of the night and say, Roland, wake up, this person here wants to go in business. What's the one thing you would tell them? You could wake me and shake me anytime. The first thing I would tell them was, live beneath your means. Live beneath your means. And that discipline has led to a lot, Lady Jade, where there was a guy, Ed Renzi, he was the CEO of the company at that time. He told us when we first started, 36 years ago, he had a group of franchisees in. Ernie Adair was in that group. He said, you're going to have a lot of money coming in. McDonald's generated a lot of cash. Believe it or not, at that time, we didn't have credit cards. We didn't have credit cards until 2002. You just had cash coming in. And sometimes it wasn't a lot, but you had cash. It was a cash generated a lot of cash. And he said, only about this much belongs to you. So I've learned that. And in positions I've been in McDonald's, I've seen a lot of people fail. So we have, the 20-plus restaurants, but we live like we have about 5. And it's very comfortable, which means you have something left over to give back. One other point I want to bring in, this is sort of tangent. And I mentioned this the other night with Hiawatha Williams. Some of you know Mr. Williams, Williams Chicken, my hero. You just can't take money out of the community. You just can't take money out of the community. You got to put money back into the community.
Amen.
And so I learned that early on. First, it was with Spruce High School, Skyline High School, Samuel High School, Lincoln High School, given to their athletic programs, given to their cheerleader programs. Then I want to do some things different. I remember we had a chess tournament, and I started exploring these things. And it was actually with the African American Museum Hall of Fame. I don't know if you saw in there, we had Roger Staubach in the picture. I don't know if you saw that. Roger Staubach was in that picture, and there was a reason he was in that picture. And I think it was Jackie Sherrill from Texas A&M. So those are the principles: focus, discipline, and live beneath your means.
And I will also say this, I love to bring this up. Mr. P does not give free hookups at McDonald's, not even to his family, okay? But that's living beneath your means too, right? That's part of that whole concept, right?
Yeah, I had a young man, we trained together, at 25 hours a week. There was a group of 7 of us that trained. And so Ray left first and he went to Washington, D.C. And his wife used to come in on weekends and he would call me, Roland, how you doing? In fact, he had 3 restaurants, I still have 1. He says, my wife comes in, she gets a grocery bag, she goes into the back, she gets bacon, she gets eggs and things like that. If my wife came to the front counter, if I go to the front counter and I haven't worked, I pay for my food. But now if I work, I told the GM, I said, look, I worked today, I unloaded the truck, I expect to eat free. So Ray is out of business, and I'm still in business. But I think that was the wrong principle. That was the wrong principle. You know what I mean? It was the wrong principle.
Well, Mr. Pete, we're only a few days away from Sunday. And one of the things that made me fall in love with Mr. Parrish's spirit is that he loves God and he is not ashamed to say it. And there are principles that you live by. So if we could take them to church. Let's go to Luke, then we'll go to Malachi, because you truly attribute tithing being a part of the reason why you're successful.
Yeah, and so just to let you know, I am a PK. I'm the son of a preacher. How many PKs we got in the house? We got some PKs in the house.
Went over here.
And so we were in Houston. I'm waving to somebody over there. And we had got up to 7%. We were in Acres Homes. If anybody's from Houston, we were going to church in Acres Home. And when we came here, we had new construction, and we had delayed construction. So I hired employees, but I didn't have any revenue coming in for a while. And so it took 4 months for the restaurant to finally get built, to finish out. So I had no income for 4 months. Then when we opened, now I had revenue coming in to pay my employees, to pay for food and things like that. But I was afraid to take money out of the business. I was afraid. And I remember when I finally wrote a check with my name in the corner, I felt really good. But the other thing I felt good about was I felt like I was across from God and said, okay, God, I haven't had any money for 9 months. Take half. And it's like he said, nope. Take 25%. Nope. It's like he said, I just want 10. It was so easy to give that 10. And being a preacher's kid, we're going to go to the New Testament first. Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is required. If somebody says expected is the expectation, required is a contract. Ooh. To whom much is given, much is required. Then we'll go back to Malachi 3:10 to 14. And will a man rob God? But bring food into the storehouse, and I will open up the windows of heaven and pour you out blessings that you won't have room to receive. There is a line, sometimes it's 2 words, sometimes it's 3 words. Dr. Flowers, I missed that for many years. Only about 4 years ago did I get it. It says, prove me, test me. I didn't see that until about 5 years ago. I will open up the windows of heaven and pour you out blessings. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, I look at some of the accolades. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. In fact, sometimes I said, does God even want me on earth? Is he letting me see these things? Because I'm going to die young. A park, a library at Purdue, a building at a HBCU. And I think about those things, but I say that because I learned how to tithe through McDonald's by going that 9 months with nothing coming in. Billy Preston, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. When you get something coming in, it was easy to give that 10%, Doc. It was easy. Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. P, you know how we can't cry to the end, Mr. P. Like, I'm trying to keep my eyelashes on, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Lady Jade a hand. Let's give Lady Jade a hand.
Well, I'd be remiss not to mention we're living in some very interesting times right now. So we're reminded now more than ever why it is so important, especially as minorities, to support other minority businesses. I want to bring up the fact before you share the statistic about how the dollar circulates in each community. You know, sometimes we look at supporting minorities as a fad, right? Or something that we do temporarily. Another thing I admire about you, Mr. P, you have always been very intentional about making sure that you support minority small businesses. You hire. Can we talk about who all you hire as far as minority, so that you're continuing to circulate the dollar in the minority community?
Okay, and what we'll do here is I want to talk about a book by a lady named Maggie Anderson. Okay, somebody knows Maggie Anderson, okay? She woke up sometime in the early 2000s in the city of Chicago. She wanted to find a grocery store that was owned by an African American. The whole book goes, it took her a year to find a grocery store owned by an African American. Wow. But in the preface of the book, to me, the most valuable thing that I gather from the book, and my numbers may be a teeny bit off, but if you spend $100 retail, you can say $1,000 retail. In the Anglo community, that $100 will stay 17 days before it exits. In the Jewish community, 17 days it'll churn in that neighborhood before it exits. In the Asian community, 30 days that $1,000 spent in that Korean or that Asian community will churn before it leaves that community. In the African American community, 6 hours.
Wow.
6 hours. So I deliberately hire when I can. And this is, to me, rising tide raises all boats. And I tried this yesterday. You know, it said you could give a person a fish and they can eat. You give them a pole, they can feed themselves. You give them a pond and they might be able to open a business. And so it's almost like, I was trying to think of this from a political standpoint. But if we could find where the two parties could work together, maybe it's moderates on both sides, and try to lift America. Let's not lift like one agenda or another agenda, and let's lift everybody, because rising tide raises all boats. If a community can self-sustain, it's good for everybody. It's good for everybody. So I purposely try to hire black and brown vendors, not because I'm prejudiced, because it's just good. It's good for their business. It's the American dream. Mm-hmm. It's the American dream.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, we know that there's a lot of DE&I programs that are being cut all over the nation. And one of the things that I did not mention earlier, which I want to make sure that I mention, your nonprofit, the Parrish Charitable Foundation, has had this partnership with the Texas Rangers. Mm-hmm. For how many years?
This will be our 4th year, our second contract, but our 5th year, but our second contract.
And so you guys have just extended the contract 4 more years. And this is where they provide undergraduate students from diverse backgrounds 10-week front office internships with Major League Baseball with the Texas Rangers. Is that not amazing? So, and you love that program too.
Right, and what happens, a couple things. One, the Texas Rangers are any major league, if a family owns a major league sports franchise in America, and I had the opportunity, I'm on the foundation with the Texas Rangers, to remind them, I mean, it's like magic. You're living in almost a dream world. And these young people, and we have our star pupil, Kendall Coleman, he now works for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he reports directly to the general manager. He scouted the Arizona Diamondbacks when we won that World Series. And so if you can get that on your resume, and it's a paid internship, but if you could get, say, a Mavericks, a Texas Rangers, a Dallas Cowboys, if you get that on your resume, these graduates are in entertainment and they're in sports. They've been with the Lakers, the Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks, the Dallas Wings, and others. So it creates this opportunity. If you could get that on your resume, that helps you so much to get that job. And it's for the front office for black and brown and women, because they're underrepresented. They're underrepresented in the back offices or the front offices of sports. And so we like that program. It's named after Charlie Pride. But when you look at it, the Parrish Foundation is the one that funds it.
Did I ever tell you my Charlie Pride story?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so this is so off topic. I'm so sorry. I was just like, you mentioned Charlie Pride. I met him when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And how about this? I didn't know who he was, right? And I was like, they were like, he's famous. It was on a golf course. Like, why was I on a golf course at 8 or 9 years old? And he started singing. And I'm like, that was the first famous person I had ever met in my life was Charlie Pride. So that's pretty neat. And then now, look, full circle. This is meant to be, Mr. P. I'm just telling you, this is meant to be.
Right.
So you kind of glazed past something that's very important. You're actually on the executive committee alongside 2 of the owners.
With the Rangers.
With the Rangers. You are the only minority on that executive committee. How does it feel in 2025 to still be saying the only black?
Okay. Yeah, the only black, because there's some minority and women.
Okay, yeah, true.
And, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the pendulum swings. And that's one of those where I feel fortunate, and I don't think so much about I'm the only black. I think about, hey, I got to make sure that I represent. And I have some principles. When I'm in meetings, I only talk if I have something to say. And if I do, I try to, okay, Roland, let's make a crisp point. And sometimes if somebody brings up something and I want to endorse it really quickly and then go on to my point. So I don't try to hog the mic, but I still, the principles, make sure I'm disciplined, make sure I'm focused, make sure I'm prepared, and I've done my homework, and I've read the material. And because that'll help somebody else behind me get appointed. Get appointed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you've opened up the door. You're a trailblazer. You've opened up the door for so many in so many different instances. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so you were speaking about reading the materials. One thing I love is your book list. So
Okay.
I say pull out your cell phones if you have cell phones. If you're looking for really great book suggestions, you have the best book list I've ever heard. So
Okay.
if you could give us about 3 to 5 books that you recommend everybody in this room reads, especially as they're growing their empire.
Okay. I'm gonna try to squeeze in 6 real quick. Okay. One is Lee Iacocca's book, and I don't know if you know who Lee Iacocca was. Lee Iacocca's book, not Straight Talk, the one before Straight Talk. It's a biography. This man energized Ford, and he pulled Chrysler out of they were going bankrupt. Then Jack Welch, GE, General Electric, and Jack Welch, many call him like the business manager of the 20th century. And believe it or not, there's a book called Leadership by Rudy Giuliani, and it's how he managed 9/11. And that to me is a good management book. Okay, and then I'm gonna have my Black trilogy. The richest black man in America from the 30s to the 50s was A.G. Gaston in his book called Titan. It's very interesting to see how he saw a need and built an empire. Over $100 million was his worth, and this guy probably had like a 3rd grade education.
Wow.
He was replaced by John H. Johnson, whose book is Succeeding Against the Odds. You guys remember Ebony Jet? Your grandmother had him laying around for a long time.
Y'all know y'all wanted to be the Jet Beauty of the Week. Come on, you know, that's what we all wanted to
girls.
be.
And so his is called Succeeding Against the Odds. A lot of principles that I picked up from that book. And then the last one is Reginald Lewis's book, which is called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And he replaced John H. Johnson as the richest black man in America. And you know he never appeared, what's my magazine guy? He never appeared in Ebony Jet. Reginald Lewis was never in Ebony Jet. Then there's a book called Lincoln on Leadership, which is a paperback, really thin, but how Lincoln managed the Civil War. And I think it's Don Phillips who wrote the book. Phillips is the last name, but I think it's Don Phillips. And so to me, those are, actually I squeezed in 7 really great business books. Now, a lady asked me the other day, she didn't see those as business books. So I said, okay, well, if you want a pure business book, pick up an accounting or finance book and then explain to me, you know the equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity, and then play around with it. Okay, what is assets minus equity? What is assets minus liability? And I said, if you really understand that, or in finance, the debt coverage ratio, so that's pure business with numbers.
And when Mr. Parrish told her that, she was like, okay, what was that last book that you said? Well, there is a reason why you work so hard. Our why is so important. And I'm still trying to find my why, but your why drives me. So I always have Mr. Parrish share this story, and we call this his boot story. If you don't know what your own why is, or if your own why isn't strong enough to push you out of the bed, possibly maybe you can stand on his shoulders and listen to his why, and maybe that can be the reason why people, you know, get up on those tough days. So if you don't mind sharing with us my favorite story ever.
The boot story.
Yes.
I'll say, so one more time, because this is the end. So let's give a round of applause again to Lady Jade, and thank you so much for navigating this. So this boot story, and I had a great family, you know, my father, my mother, my brother, and I was 4 of us, a nucleus family. But I always talk about my grandfather when I think about him during the Depression. So it's probably like about 1928. And in your mind, think black and white, not color, black and white. He would get up about 4 in the morning. My grandmother would cook him breakfast because he worked in North Memphis, if anybody's from Memphis, and he had to walk through the river bottom. I saw somebody back there from Memphis, okay? He had to walk the river bottom of the Wolf River. And he would leave so that he could get there at 5 a.m., even though the man would put out the number of shovels that he needed at 6 a.m. If he needed 10 people, 10 shovels. If he needed 5 workers, 5 shovels. But my grandfather would get there to make sure he was the first one in line. So if they only laid out 1 shovel, he'd get the job that day. But the part that really resonated was, I was told his boots did not have soles. He had to put wire mesh in his boots. They didn't have shoelaces. He had wires and a wire plier. That's how he tied his boots up, with wire and a wire plier. And I said, if my grandfather could get up during the Depression, and I think a good week he made 10 cents. Now, you could buy a lot with 10 cents. I think you could buy a loaf of bread for a penny. The little things that I faced, those hurdles are nothing. Now, I believe in the power of education and reading. He eventually bought books and taught himself how to be a carpenter, and had a crew, and built homes that still are standing in North Memphis. So I challenge you, learn a wise story about your family. My children know that story. It's their great-grandfather. They know that story. And it's good to know, but that motivates me. When I think I have a challenge, I think about my grandfather. I have his saw in my library right now, and I found his business card. It's framed in a shadow box. But again, he didn't have shoes, but he did not use that as an excuse. So that's my boot story. And again, I thank you very much for coming out. Hopefully that I have educated, entertained, but maybe inspired somebody. Thank you.
Can we please give it up for Mr. Roland Parrish? Do you want to do a little Q&A? You want to do a little Q&A?
Oh, sure.
So I think we have a few moments. Mr. Parrish, I told you, his favorite part is not talking to me. His favorite part is talking to you all. So we can take a few questions if anybody has any questions.
Oh, man.
Hi.
All right, thank you, Lady Jade. We love that you're here, but there's another Jade
Yes, there is another Jade.
who's created the greatest joy in Mr. Parrish's life.
True.
You hadn't mentioned it. I can't let him get out of here without bringing that forth. And then my second question is, what would happen if just 20%, because you're not the only successful African-American businessman in this city, in this country, in this state, what would happen if just 20% took the initiative that you've taken to bless the community?
Okay, in case you didn't hear that, was Dr. Cherry Flowers,
Yes.
one of my heroes.
Amazing.
He convinced me that St. Philip's was something I needed to invest in 30 years ago, and we continue to try to do our part. So my daughter is named Jade, and I do look at Lady Jade sort of like a daughter. I met her very early when you were with K104.
Yes.
So my daughter married about 3 years ago, and it was interesting. She got her MBA from SMU, and I'm telling you guys, I'm Dallas. She was looking at other schools. I said, no, if it's got to be SMU. So it was SMU. She got married, and so now she has, she blessed us with our second grandchild, December 17th. And her name is Layla, like Layla Hathaway. And so thank you for bringing that up. And I think I know some of you know Jade.
So I am Jade 2B. For the first time in my, I'm like, I'm the other, they always say, oh, the other Jade. I'm the other Jade,
yeah.
yes.
And so we're blessed with that. You know, Doc, I can't say specifically what, but you know, a lot of good things would happen. Because that would be, if just 20% of the successful businesses, and I just looked at that number and thought about with things that I give, if we multiply by 20 people, if I look at what I've given to Fisk or what I've given to St. Philip's and you multiply it by 20 people, if they do that, man, that would be a lot of capital that is generated in the community. And it could help a lot of people. So if you have your business, and I guess I ask you to stay beneath your means, And it took me a while. I started the foundation after I was in business for really almost 25 years. And I was giving back, and I was giving what I could afford. But the foundation really took off. We started in 2015, and it was somewhere around 2016 and 17. But again, those blessings to me from God, the exponential blessings that we've been able to give. And I stretch it. Like when we made the pledge at Purdue, when we made the pledge for St. Philip's, to me, I was stretching it. But then we achieved it. And then we go back to the well and we try to achieve it again. But there would be a lot, even if you gave your time, Dr. Flowers,
Yep.
if we could get people to give time, your time and your talents. So hopefully with sessions like this, where's Lubbock? Like right there in Vista Bank, and we thank Vista Bank and the Dallas Black Chamber for what you're doing. So think about it. Think about the giving back. I'm a capitalist. I believe in making money, but then I believe in, as a charitable person, in giving money back to the community. But it would be very impactful, Dr. Flowers. I have to think more on that one.
Great question.
1, 2.
My name is Julian. Appreciate both of you taking your time out and just having this conversation with us. Mr. Parrish, the question, why ownership? I mean, you didn't have to. You went to a great school. You could continue on the corporate climb, and as an entrepreneur, it's not easy. I'm pretty sure you had plenty of opportunities to quit and do something else. But why ownership? What does that mean to you?
I think that one of the best things that happened to me, and I wasn't thinking so much about the ownership of a business. I was thinking about the independence and the kind of people I would be around. But I would say in the end, if you can do it, and some people have the gift for corporate America. They have it where they could go up the ladder and break the glass ceiling. And I just saw my talents weren't there. And if I think about it, how much I learned in service stations, which is almost on the front line. And I just think if you can own it, that's what you do. And something else, and I won't get into this, I can't at my age just talk about Dr. King and Rosa Parks. So I made a commitment this last few years. Aramis Ertegun, you know who that is? Nipsey Hussle. I read his book, The Marathon. I read Jay-Z's book, the book by Eric Michael Dyson, because I can quote some of the songs and I think about it. And Jay-Z talks a lot about that. He speaks about it. And this one, when I say it's a marathon, not a sprint, those are the words from Nipsey Hussle's book. And so when I talk to the younger people, and even Nipsey and Jay-Z are kind of old rappers now, like when I go to college, but I got to make sure that I can relate. And so to me, the talk is about owning, equity, saving your money, investing, and to me, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. I think we have somebody right there, and then we catch this young guy. Right? Yeah, okay. Entrepreneur himself.
Let me just thank you first and foremost.
Okay.
James Thomas, Southern Dallas Magazine.
Okay.
You've been on the cover, what now, 3 times? And I cannot wait for the 4th time. Because there's so much to always put in there about it. But this is a little bit different. We talk a lot about entrepreneurship, but we don't always talk about the wives of the husbands who are the entrepreneurs. I've been married 29 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Glory to God. And the things my wife had to endure, having an entrepreneur husband, is tough. A lot of times, I asked Dr. Bishop James, how do you balance? I interviewed him. He thought for a second. He said, I don't really balance. You got to ask Serena that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to balance business, home, the wife, how do you achieve that? What's been your balance?
Okay. And I'm going to answer one part where I had a manager one time who started with me when she was a teenager. She worked up to GM, Felicia Bibles. She was a Spruce graduate. So she made GM, and she had children early. I mean, she was probably 22 and had 3 children. And her oldest daughter was a cheerleader at Frederick Douglass. So I remember a couple months later, we would have manager meetings, and I said, did you go see your daughter cheerlead? She says, no. I said, why? She said, I was busy at the store. I was like, Felicia, you make your own schedule. When your daughter's having a game, put yourself, you could split your shift, do a 4-hour shift, go to the game for 2 hours and then come back, because you can't miss that. And so if you have the power to empower your employees to do that, do that. I made sure I made games, but there was a lot that I missed, so I have to thank Jewel because she did that. But what's good now is my children have told me that they forgive that. And that, there's some nice things. They graduated from college, didn't have debt. They've never had a car note. So it's some good things. But we sit around because we try to dabble in real estate, and so it's great to sit around with them. They're allergic to McDonald's as far as being ownership. They'll eat at McDonald's without. But it's great to sit around the table with them and discuss some business ventures and things like that. So I do appreciate that. But I can't say I did the best job, but I'm working at it now, and my children don't hold me hostage to that. They don't hold me hostage to that. Okay. So if I had to do it again, I probably would have taken a little more time. But I tried to make the big things. I tried to really make the big things. This young lady right here.
Hello, and thank you again, Jade and Mr. Parrish. So I'm LaShante Williams, and I'm super intentional. I really like to change the narrative in terms of supporting. I don't support black businesses. I am actually just intentional about making sure that that's all I do for the most part. I try and be like the young lady that wrote the book. And so can you tell us where we can find out where all of your McDonald's are? So if we are of the consciousness to say McDonald's is, corporate-wise tripping on DEI, we don't have to go to those, but we can go to yours. So where can we find all of yours?
Okay.
So that we can go to
Okay. Remember the Gary American? I talked about the black newspaper. So I don't know if you have any Dallas Examiners.
We also have other magazines as well. We got a few up there.
Yeah, so the Dallas Examiner, I may have to talk to you about that because on the Dallas Examiner, every week on the last page, sometimes it's the next to the last page because they'll sell the last page, with the YMCA, it lists all my restaurants.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you want to, and usually, was Rodney here?
Right.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times Rodney had some with him, but you probably didn't bring him there. And he's an independent contractor. Rodney and Lady J are not my employees. They have their own companies. Let's give them a hand. So Rodney, if any of you guys remember Muhammad Ali? Anybody remember Muhammad Ali? Yeah. Okay, all right. Remember Don King? Yes. That's my Don King. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, he is.
And Lady J, she has her charity and she has her business. So, I'm proud of it. They're part of the vendors network that I use. And, they do great work, and I hope they say I compensate them well. Yeah. I don't expect them to come free. And we sit and talk. When I have to write a check for a vendor that Rodney brings forward or somebody that Lady J for, we want to be fair. I say, no, I want to be fair. And we want to write a check because I want them to say, hey, look, I'm doing this for Mr. Parrish, and when I ask them to do it again, they'll want to do it. So, but yeah, they're independent contractors. Okay? Okay, let's see. Yeah, we got Mr. Brown. Is somebody in the back? Because sometimes we miss him in the back. If not, we take Mr. Brown.
Please, let him know.
Are you the man from Memphis? Okay, which side? Which high school? Riverside?
I went to Ridgeway.
Ridgeway? Okay. Yeah, that's where the rich people live.
My dad's from Riverside, so I want to know what was your grandfather's name?
Well, his name was Will Parrish. But yeah, people can't really know him. But I remember there was a Stroger's drugstore, and Stroger's son became a great jazz musician. He went to Chicago. But it was in that Hollywood area off of Chelsea and Hollywood where he built a lot of homes, and a lot of homes are still there. Yeah. But he was able, he bought books. I was like, he bought books and taught himself, self-taught how to be a carpenter.
That was very inspiring. My dad, he lives right here in Fair Park.
Okay.
His house.
Okay.
From the ground up. I'm a builder.
Okay.
So when you were talking about, just being in blood is just very inspiring to know that, what our families pass down to us, it's in our DNA, it's in our blood.
Right.
So, I was just very inspired by that, and I wanted to look, to see those houses that are still standing today in Memphis. And so,
Yeah, 2167 Curry Street is one of them. Yeah, and if you ever get that, 2167 Curry, probably half the houses on that street were built by him. And Clarkdale and in some of those streets in that area. Once you see a couple of them, you could kind of tell which ones he built. But you think about it, those houses are now approaching like 70, 80, 90 years old.
Wow.
Okay.
And so Jamal and Sinitria, they are both builders, and I actually learned to build alongside them. So we are all builders and developers now. So
Okay, Mr. Brown, an entrepreneur himself, and his mom is an architect. In many of the fire stations and libraries that we see, she was an architect with the city of Dallas, and first black female architect. So let's give him a hand for his mom. So she got an ovation today.
Kevin Brown was Simply Custom. First, let me say thank you to Vista Bank for allowing us to have this event in our community. It's very impactful, very necessary. So, Lubbock, thank you for that.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you, Lady J. You did a great job. First time I've seen you in person. You do a great job on the air, but you did an amazing job. So we appreciate you.
thank you.
But Brother Parrish.
Yes, sir.
Listen, been knowing you a while. Let me say this to you. I don't know if I've said it to you before, but thank you, brother, for your obedience to what God has called you to do. That's really important that you get that. We appreciate that. But one question. You've done a lot. This is Black History Month. What can we do as a collective for you?
Oh, for me.
Yeah, that's what I got. You think on that one, but what can we do? What can we do with all you're doing to support you?
Yeah, I would think that most of you were reared up by God-fearing parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles. And with the principles that you learned in church and Sunday school, and if you even crack open one of those books, almost any one of them that I mentioned, I think I mentioned 7 to 8 books, and just say, hey, I'm going to work very hard, whatever I do, whether I work for somebody or whether I have my own company, and say, then I'm going to try to reach back. You know, there's a phrase, paying it forward. I always say, like, reach back and pull somebody up. Even if you just pull one person. But if you get that one person, then reach back again. Can I get a second person?
Yes.
And there's certain things that I try to make sure I do. I try to pay everybody on time, but my black vendors, I really try to pay them on time because I'm black and I can say it. Because most of the time they have less cash. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but I just make sure, hey, get that check out early, pay early, and just try to do good. My father would say, he being a minister, he says, let your light so shine so men can see your good works. And I would say men and women, being like in our culture. And just try, hey, I'm going to shine every day so people can see my good works and glorify the God, the Father in heaven. And just try to do good, try to do right. Try to reach back and help somebody. That's what you can do for me.
All right.
Dr. Flower's point, if we get 20%, if 20 other people can do what the Brown Construction Company is doing, what some of these others, what the magazine is doing, Brother James, that would be good. So reach back and help. Pull somebody up.
Got it.
That's what you could do for me.
All right.
Okay?
Got it.
All right.
Okay. And then there's somebody in the
Brother
back
West,
as well.
and so we take 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that'll be it. We're going to do the ladies first. Lady in green. Lady in green.
I was wondering, since we are like at a bank, how important is like finding the right bank to bank with as an entrepreneur and figuring out like when to scale, how to money management, and really just talk about like the financials and making sure that you're like doing your part with like tax, business, and like distributing and making sure your business is on track to be able to stay in business. Like how important or what important tools do you have for that?
All right. One, I think one of the best things to do is make sure you have a good accountant. And your accountant should be able to give you financial advice. If you have banking, and some people want to get in business and have no debt. Some businesses you got to have debt. And so make sure, shop the banks, pick the right bank. We were with Vista here today. I've talked to different people. Lubbock has a sharp team here. All right, so those to me are the two principles, and then your gut feel. If you're just getting in to grow, you're probably like in the wrong business. Okay, if I get this one site, am I taking care of my customers? Is it strong enough? And do I have the right person that could run it? So if I open up this second site, that I'm not gonna suffer in quality service, value, cleanliness. but have those right advisors and get to know people who are in the same business as you that have been in business longer than you, and you could talk with them. So to me, it's more of asking right questions and listening to your advisors. And remember the first one, live beneath your means. Do you have the money for the second one? Okay? And I think you'll be okay. I think, Brother Maurice, we have a lady over here, and then Brother Mo.
Before you take the next question, which goes, like, mentorship is so important, like he said, the lift as you rise. But we've spoken before about, you bring up, there's this formula that you use. It's something, and I'm going to misquote it, so that's why I want you to quote it. It's about, basically, you train your people and you get out of the way. And I think it's important to mention right here, because I think oftentimes, especially culturally, we're taught to be the cook, the clean, so we're trying to play every role. So it's impossible for us to scale because we don't have anybody to run our business in order so we can open up the next one. So what is that formula?
Okay. There's a quote by two different people 100 years apart that says almost the same thing. So Teddy Roosevelt, one of our great presidents, and then A-Rod, who was world famous for being the boyfriend, at one time the husband of, what's her name?
J-Lo.
J-Lo, right, J-Lo, I'm sorry.
That's what he was famous for, right?
Yeah, and so.
I do remember him playing baseball.
Yeah. And so they both said this quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but remember, these guys are 100 years apart. And they both say, find the people, train the people, and get out of the way and let them do their job. And I add to that make sure you reward them. And so I have the quotes on a slide, but 100 years apart, they're saying about the same thing. So find the people, train the people, and I think in A-Rod, he talks about have the right culture, and then to me, make sure you reward the people and get out of the way and let them do their job. Okay?
That's strong.
So that's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Brother West. Oh, I think, was it? Oh, was it? It was a lady over here. Oh, yeah.
I'll defer to the lady, whoever it was.
Okay, so we'll catch Brother West, and then we'll jump over.
This is quick. Good afternoon, Maurice West, Paul Quinn.
Dean at Paul Quinn.
Yes.
Okay.
What challenges, what are you thinking about in technology and innovation? Segueing on what she spoke about, that we're dealing with, that you can make recommendations. How do we advance? How do we keep growing? And even in the employment aspects.
Okay. And you know what? I'm sort of a dinosaur, and when I look at things with technology, I'm probably not the right person, except the part about get out of the way. So I'm talking with Lady J today. She has someone, I don't know if he's on her staff or if he's a contractor.
He is a contractor.
He's a contractor. But he did an editing job, and it was one of the best edited videos. And I've seen a lot of videos, and actually did a documentary that we won some awards, This Wall Must Come Down. And I was like, man, and we look at the young people, they edit so much on their phones that editing, and I took some editing classes, they don't have to take the editing classes. And when the software changes, they just go with the flow. Every time the software changed, I had to go to Apple and get a tutorial. So I'm just saying with the new technology, I learned I have to get out of the way. I have to have young people around me and let them take us to higher heights. My children, let them take it to higher heights. And I may have to tell them that they have to eventually let their children take it to higher heights. So to me, on the new technology and things like that, yes, we need to do it. But I'm the guy that's smart enough to say, let me get out of the way and let them do it. But I know the basics and always look at it, because sometimes there's a disadvantage when you just only depend on touching the button and not knowing what are the basics. Remember I talked about the formula, the accounting formula? Assets equal liability plus equity, and you start playing with it. Okay, if I take assets and move it over to the other side, minus equity, what is that? Okay, that equals liabilities. If you start playing with it, make sure you understand the basics. So that's mine.
You just promoted the value of education.
Oh yeah, the value of education.
And he,
Up and down.
And he's referring to a young man. His name is Brendan Jackson. In his 20s, he's my videographer. I take him everywhere with me, and he is self-taught. Like I say, still in his 20s, and he is. I just think it's so cool that he's self-taught. You know what I mean? And he always says YouTube University, but once he made up in his mind he wanted to do it, you know, and he really is one of the best in the game for sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He did a video of Pastor Carter doing an intro, and I was just amazed at his work. But he was a contractor that said, we want to compensate him because I want to give him some more work. But yes, sir.
Yes, Vince Dobbins, thank you all for doing this. Don King, Jay. That's my wife, Christy. My name is Vince Shard. We're associate pastors at the Potter's House.
Oh, okay.
The reason why I'm acknowledging my wife is this is our anniversary. So
How many years?
Hold up, let's just be clear, everybody, because she's like, we're supposed to be at lunch right now.
You have an extremely acute and bright mind, so I don't waste this time with questions. I've been to Uganda, missionary trips. Obviously, you know what the orphanages are about there. I think they need restructure. I think the motto of life is you have a proper structure, strategy, system, you create a solution. You're obviously from Hammond. I preach in East Chicago,
Oh,
Gary,
wow.
etc.
Okay.
You spent time in Memphis. We're right smack dab in the middle of South Dallas. If you were rebuilding a city or a church to include both AI, education, real estate, etc., how would you build the structure? What would you do to create a better strategy for the next 10, 20 years?
It's interesting when you talk about the churches. It goes back to something I said. It might have been yesterday. We did one yesterday up in McKinney, and I'm thinking I talked with the lady in green back there in the back. I would explore some of the successful churches. I have a friend who called me. He actually, since we're talking about that, he married my wife and I 47 years ago, and it was a really small. It would have been a storefront in Hammond or East Chicago, but it wasn't a storefront because he was in Huntsville, Alabama. And now he's got a mega church. And we drove through and during COVID and visited with him for 24 hours. You're with Bishop Jakes. I love where I am with Concord. And I would look at those models and determine, and it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, and look at those. And obviously stay on bended knee. But I think the models you could get from what's already been successful, then you pray that God puts you in the right place. I really didn't want to leave Houston. I look back now, I'm glad I left Houston. Right. I thought Houston was going to be the place. But it turns out I look at now, and I know God can do things anywhere, but I think because I was placed in Dallas, because I was placed in Pleasant Grove. You guys, does anybody know where Lincoln Cemetery is? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you know how many funerals would pass my restaurant on a Saturday? And you know what? The ministers, they would stop, and I had one restaurant. I'd be in an apron, and they would come in, and you could almost spot the minister. And I started talking to him. Now, if you guys remember Reverend Robert Parrish, he's in the book Accommodation, his son Don Parrish and Don Parrish Jr., people thought that I was one of their siblings. Because they said, are you Reverend Parrish's son? I used to say, yeah. But the wrong parish. And so I got to know a lot of ministers. I got to know a lot of ministers down there. H.J. Johnson, a lot of ministers down. And like small time, you could say small-time ministers. But he placed me that. And so I would run into ministers later that remember me from stopping because they would stop to grab a sandwich. And then the word got around that, hey, man, there's a black guy who owns that restaurant by Lincoln, the McDonald's. So, but I think with the model, you got some successful models, Bishop Jakes, Dr. Carter. And I could give you the name of the gentleman who over these 40 years built the mega church in Huntsville, Alabama. And then pray to God that he put you and your wife in the right place. And then remember what Erma Sertigan said. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. and I had blinders on, discipline, focus, and you work it every day. And I wasn't looking at how it was going to end. I was just working day by day. Am I helping somebody today? You know, working day by day, working there brick by brick, store by store. And then you turn around and you look and say, hey, man, it's going pretty good. Then you put your head down it again and keep working. But that's very good. Okay. All right. I see a hand back there.
Okay. Well, this is the last one.
Listen, I just want to say thank you so much. This is my first time going to anything like this. Lady J hadn't seen you in a long time. I want to say thank you. Mr. Parrish, thank you. But I've been listening to you. And this is let me say this. My name is Melissa Harrison. My husband, David Harrison. And we're in the food industry.
Okay.
So listening to you, very inspired. I have a question for you though, and I want to say thank you about talking about Hawaka Williams, one of the Dallas-owned black businesses as well. My question to you though, is there any black-owned national brand restaurants that we know of or don't know of? If there is, would you put me in that direction that you know of? Because I don't know of any. I know that, you know, for on a franchise level, on any level, just a national brand, black-owned restaurant business.
Melissa, what's your business?
Shrimp dock. That's the goal for myself at some point, me and my husband, but is there anything out there?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I got a franchisee friend up here. I know, what was the guy, Williams, that he was the chief operating officer of Denny's? But that's not, you know, it's not a black company, but he was very, very high.
Was bought by a black group.
Which is what? Fuddruckers?
Like McDonald's started and founded their own business and not by in two.
No, I can't say that I know.
Okay.
Yeah, the closest I know would be Mr. Williams.
20%, sir, of us coming together, that's what I want to talk about. How does that work? How does that come together as a black-owned business, starting from the ground up? That's what I'm doing, my husband, that's what we've been doing since 2016.
Uh-huh.
I would love to see how that works. You know what I'm saying? Put me in the direction so, you know, I can see how that works, you know, for going to that level.
Yeah, and I would say at this time, I don't think that there is one, unless it's, well, because Fuddruckers, even if it wasn't, it didn't start.
Right, he
Yeah,
said maybe Fat Burger, but he wasn't sure. Fat Burger.
Fat Burger.
Fat Burger.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's, I
Yep.
think they're on the corner of Nipsey Hussle's corner.
A
I
Fat
think so.
Burger?
Okay.
Oh,
Are you closing it out? You're closing? Lady J's gonna close it out.
So
Thank you very
can we
much,
clap it up
everybody.
one more time for Mr. Roland Parrish? And we are so glad that God chose him to come to Dallas. Thank you so much, Mr. P. We appreciate it.